everybody, Casey here, and I'm trying to answer a couple of questions that cropped up after The Last Jedi. Of course, speculation is always going to be rampant. Star Wars tends to do that, especially when there's 2 years in between movies and we're unpacking JJ's mystery box, but we have been conditioned somewhat over the years throughout different movie franchises to really question whether or not a movie is telling us the truth and the whole truth and nothing but the truth, or is it just misdirects? We do this with the trailers. We saw The Last Jedi trailer and everyone was like, oh, it's full of misdirects. And then we watched The Last Jedi and people realized, oh, it really wasn't a misdirect. Huh, how about that? That's interesting. This particular video is going to be talking all about Rey. And the big question on everybody's mind, which is Rey really a nobody? Or is she actually somehow still connected to the Skywalkers or the Solos or even the Kenobis or Palpatine? Or like, who is Rey? Who is she? Well, Rey sure knows, and she told us from the very beginning. In the Force Awakens trailer, she literally says, I'm no one.
I'm no one.
So us, knowing JJ and the mystery boxes, we're like, oh, well, let's unpack that. Like, who is she really? Is just a red herring? Or, trying to figure it out. So the Rey's parentage question was on the foremost of everybody's minds, even before the Force Awakens release, because that trailer was like, okay, well, she's clearly the protagonist, the main person. So now what? So we know that the old guys are coming back. Harrison Ford, Carrie Fisher, Mark Hamill. So it's clearly somebody's there. Somebody's related. And Rey looks like the contact person, right? So it's spelled out in the trailers that she was a nobody. She's no one, she says herself, and then confirmed again in The Last Jedi that she is literally nobody. Kylo draws it out of her and she says, they were no one. I'm nobody, she says. Then goes in on her even more and it says they were nobody. They were filthy junk traders who sold you off for drinking money and they are dead in a pauper's grave in the Jakku desert. A little brutal, Kylo, not gonna lie, but it's true, right? She didn't deny it. She was more trying to accept who she was, that she always knew that her parents weren't coming back, that they were dead, that they had sold her off, that they were kind of jerks and sold her to probably Unkar Plutt, and that everything that she had said in The Force Awakens, how she's waiting for her parents to come back and, we'll come back for you, sweetheart, all that stuff were just made up things in her head to soothe the heartache of a 5-year-old girl being abandoned completely by her parents. That in itself is heartbreaking. And Kylo himself sees this, recognizes it, and says, you're no one to this story, you're nobody, but not to me. Basically speaking for the audience, saying, okay, look, we know you're not related to anybody that we care about. You're just some person that is really strong with the Force, and that's you're nobody to this story, to this saga, but you are to us now. We spent 2 movies with you, Rey. We like you a little bit, and let's go off and create a new order. Let's learn some Jedi stuff and go from there. So now that that's kind of there, right? So I obviously agree that she's really a nobody, but let's really unpack that question of who she was, because in retrospect, when you really look back at it, she was pretty upfront. The movie was pretty upfront. JJ Abrams himself said Rey's parents aren't in The Force Awakens, so that means that she's not Luke Skywalker's daughter, she's not Leia Organa's daughter, she's not Kylo's twin or daughter or sister or cousin or whatever. I mean, at the very most, maybe she was a Kenobi or Palpatine or something like that, because they're not in The Force Awakens. So, but this question of who she was almost entirely a fandom and audience phenomena. I mean, obviously, when you have 2 years in between movies, you're going to fill it up somehow because there's kind of a dearth of content. But even maybe like 1 or 2 months after The Force Awakens release, Daisy Ridley herself debunked that she wasn't related to anyone in The Force Awakens. She's asked point blank if she's Han Solo's daughter, and she's like,
you're Han Solo's daughter. And in my head, I was like, how do you know? Like, have you seen the film? Clearly not, because I wasn't.
She's totally done. She was done 2 months after The Force Awakens, and she's had to endure these kinds of questions for 2 years. So JJ says her parents aren't in The Force Awakens. I'm pretty sure he even comes out and directly says she's not a Skywalker in the New York Comic Con or something like that. That was in March of 2016. They've been pretty upfront that she's pretty much nobody, but the fandom was like, oh, just like this video itself is a speculation video. There were 2 years of speculating who on earth Rey was when the answer was literally right in front of us the whole time. Now, obviously, it's fun to speculate like, oh, what if she's a Palpatine or what if she's a Kenobi? That would be kind of cool for the narrative. Well, it would just be just as cool for the narrative if she were a nobody. But I mean, it wouldn't really kind of soothe that fandom need to connect to the other movies. But Rey being a nobody is really, I think, probably the best fit. And that's why Lucasfilm went that. Like, they clearly wanted to kind of flip the script on the Skywalker saga, and they certainly did so with Kylo Ren being Ben Solo and kind of it being about his walk in the dark side rather than just the fall to the dark side or just being totally dark. He's walking in the dark side right now and he's kind of wavering in between, that kind of stuff. But anyway, so Rey is nobody. The prevailing fandom need was for her to be someone important by blood, wants to be from Luke, wants to have his blood. Just like Luke Skywalker, they needed her to be important and not stand just on her own 2 feet, right? Which is what she's doing now. She's not connected to anybody there. She was raised as a scavenger. She's literally a nobody. She's no one, but she's Rey. You know, she doesn't even have a last name. In all the official stuff, she's just Rey of Jakku. So there's also that general kind of need that there has to be a Skywalker in the Skywalker saga trilogy, all this stuff, ignoring, of course, the fact, very conveniently in some respects, that Ben Solo or Kylo Ren himself is a Skywalker. People tend to forget that Leia Organa is a Skywalker. They also tend to forget that she's Force sensitive, but I digress. We already do have a Skywalker in the saga, so it's still Skywalker saga. But maybe they don't want the Skywalker to be the bad guy or the villain or the anti-hero or whatever. They need it to be the hero. They need it to be the main protagonist. They need it to be Rey, or even Finn for that matter. They need someone that's on the good guy's side as a Skywalker hero. Fandom just couldn't quite believe that Lucasfilm would do that. They couldn't believe, and they can't believe to some extent even now, that they would have just a nobody be the center of their new franchise. But that's exactly why it's important. That's clearly what the movie is going for, that flipping the script and making real clear that you don't have to be related by blood to be very strong with the Force, to be very important to the story of Star Wars, the universe of Star Wars, that kind of stuff. Yes, now she's totally tangled up in Ben Solo and his story and their story, but ultimately she stands on her own 2 feet. She has not lost her agency. That was very clear in The Last Jedi, that she, as she evolves and now she identifies and figures out her own self, she's not losing who she is. She's not losing that control that she has over her decisions and that kind of stuff, as is made very clear in the throne room. So yes, Rey is almost certainly a nobody, as was made very clear in The Last Jedi in multiple ways. One, it revitalized the franchise, making important points, even from Luke himself, that the Force does not belong to the Jedi, almost even remarking directly that blood doesn't make you who you are, that he himself, Luke Skywalker, is a myth, both in fandom and the Star Wars universe itself. And so because of that, there's become in the galaxy this need that, oh, we need somebody who is by blood important in order to lead us from the darkness and oppression of the First Order or the Empire or whatever and into the light. And Rey herself is not a nobody. So the idea is this movie flipping that on its head and showing Luke basically how wrong he is, and he realizes that at the end, obviously. But anyway, I digress. Second part, the shot at the end with the kids. It's a little jarring, not too sold on it, but it's very important for 2 reasons. One, it solidified the Luke Skywalker myth and solidified the fact that it was he, in fact, was the spark that lights the fire that will burn the First Order down, that will spark the Resistance, all that stuff that they kept saying in The Last Jedi that they made very clear. It ended up being Luke Skywalker because he's inspiring these kids on Canto Bight and probably around the galaxy with the myth of Luke Skywalker. And then second part, the fact that the kid himself is Force sensitive. He's known as the Broom Kid in the credits. So the fact that he's Force sensitive and also clearly a nobody, he's like a servant or a slave or whatever it is with the father years, that's important. It's making a note saying, hey, again, just a reminder, everybody watching this, anybody can be Force sensitive, and if you're Force sensitive, that means anybody can be a Jedi, dark side user, Sith, whatever. So anybody could be Rey. Rey is the one that is obviously Kylo's equal in the light, and you know, she's obviously a prodigy in the Force, all that stuff, but that doesn't mean that she's driven by anything other than herself, not by blood, by any kind of legacy, anything like that. that she is just Rey of Jakku. She is a nobody. And then of course Kylo saying, almost even breaking the fourth wall in some respects, that you don't have to be a Skywalker in order to be important in the story. He says, you're nothing to the story. You're nobody. You're no one, but not to me. Literally saying again to the audience, if not Rey herself, yes, you're nobody. And to you, that means that you're not important to the story. You're no one to the story. No one could have seen you coming. And yet here you are, and you're important to me, and you're important to the story. And Rey eventually realizes that she kind of accepts that. She doesn't accept his offer, but she accepts that. She finally understands. He finally gets her to admit that she is just Rey and that she has no one else to rely on but herself in this search for identity, as Ryan says. So Rey is important because of what she will become and who she is, but not because of who she belongs to in the narrative. The final message is, of course, that the Force does not belong to the Jedi, and Star Wars does not belong to the Skywalkers. It is for everyone. That has been emphasized over and over again by Lucasfilm, and then also the movies themselves. It doesn't mean, of course, that the Skywalkers aren't important to the overall mythos of the saga. Obviously, they're called Skywalker sagas and trilogies. But if The Last Jedi was a movie about flipping the script on a franchise that could easily become repetitive and stale, and I believe it was becoming that, then Rey is in fact a nobody, and I love her all the more for it. And I can't wait to see where they go and take her in episode 9. And also I can't wait to see more of her adventures and supplementary materials like Forces of Destiny or books. I can't wait to get some books about Rey other than her Jakku diary journal. I'm just really excited to see where they're going to take her, what we're going to learn about her, and what she's going to learn about the Jedi text that she read, and how she's going to inform the story going forward. I'm very excited about it. So anyway, thanks so much. I'm Casey, and if you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. And if you disagree with the video and you have other parentage theories, hit me with them. I'm always interested in speculating with people. And yeah, thanks guys.